For those of you who do not know me, my name is Sarah, and I'm Kristen Brock's daughter and James Brock's stepdaughter. I just wanted to say goodbye to my mama and Jamie since we never got the chance to. I was so used to you guys always being here to the point that I never once thought to imagine y'all not being here. I didn't have a single clue how much I needed y'all until now. For James, thank you for all the life lessons you taught me and for being the best bonus dad ever. Your heart will finally be healed in heaven and neither of y'all will be in any pain anymore. Although that gives me so much comfort, your fight was not supposed to end there. And for my mother, everything we went through does not define what kind of person or what kind of mother you were. You were a beautiful, kind soul with so much gratitude. And so, gosh, James, try not to remember them for who they were and not what happened to them. And be happy for the time we got to spend together and not sad about the time that we don't. I may always and will always be her sunshine, but she will always be my star from up above. And I know at nighttime I can go and look at Mama and Jamie in the sky, and gladly they will save me a seat in heaven like they saved for you. I'm sorry.
Breaking today from Carroll County, Georgia. The trial that was supposed to begin just days ago has been delayed until August 2026. But here is what the prosecution doesn't want you to know yet. A neuropsychological expert hired by the defense has submitted findings so significant that the state requested more time to respond. What did that expert discover about 17-year-old Sarah Grace Patrick? What is in that report that could potentially change everything we thought we knew about this case? And most importantly, will a jury find her guilty of murdering her own mother and stepfather while they slept? Today, we are examining both sides of this deeply controversial case. We are going to walk through every piece of evidence, every contradiction in Sarah's story, and what legal experts are now predicting about the outcome of this trial. Because what happened on the morning of February 20th, 2025, in a quiet Georgia home, is about to become one of the most divisive trials this country has seen in years. Is Sarah Grace Patrick a cold-blooded killer who deserves to spend the rest of her life behind bars? Or is she a desperate teenager who snapped under circumstances we do not fully understand yet? A jury will ultimately decide her fate. But by the end of this video, you will have all the information you need to form your own opinion. Let us start from the beginning. Carrollton, Georgia, is a small city about an hour southwest of Atlanta. Population around 28,000. The kind of place where people know their neighbors, where families attend church together on Sundays, where violent crime makes headlines because it is so rare. Tyus Road sits on the outskirts of town, a quiet stretch of countryside where properties are spread apart, surrounded by trees and open land. This is where James and Kristen Brock built their life together. James Brock was 45 years old. By all accounts, he was a man who loved to make people laugh. Friends described him as the kind of guy who always had a joke ready, who could lighten any room he walked into. But behind that jovial exterior, James was fighting a battle most people never knew about. His heart was failing. He had suffered a major cardiac event in 2021 and nearly lost his life. Doctors implanted an LVAD device, a left ventricular assist device, which is essentially a mechanical pump that helps a weakened heart circulate blood. This was not a cure. It was a bridge, keeping James alive while he waited for a heart transplant that might never come. Every day was borrowed time. He knew it. His family knew it. Kristen Brock was 41 years old. She had been married once before, to a man named Doniel Patrick, and from that marriage she had 2 children, Sarah Grace Patrick, who was 16 at the time of the murders, and a younger son named Donnie, who was around 12. After her first marriage ended in 2019, Kristen found her way to James. They dated for years before finally getting married in December 2023, just 2 months before their deaths. Together, They were raising a blended family with children from previous relationships and their youngest daughter together, a little girl named Jay, who was just 5 years old. From the outside, the Brocks looked like a family that had overcome tremendous obstacles. Court documents from Kristen's divorce reveal that there had been struggles with substance use in the past. The custody battle with Daniel Patrick had been contentious, with accusations flying from both sides about the home environment. But by 2024, James and Kristen appeared to have turned a corner. They joined Catalyst Church in Carrollton and became active members of the congregation. They attended services regularly and volunteered. Friends at the church described them as transformed, devoted to their faith and to each other. On the evening of February 19, 2025, James posted something on Facebook that would later take on a haunting significance. It was a picture of his youngest daughter, Jay. The caption read, "When I'm down and don't feel good, I find comfort in this little girl. Love you, Angel Cakes." He tagged Kristen in the post. Within 24 hours, both of them would be gone. The morning of February 20th, 2025, should have been ordinary. Instead, sometime around 7:15 in the morning, 5-year-old Jay walked into her parents' bedroom. What she found is something no child should ever have to witness. Her mother and her father were lying there, surrounded by blood, completely still. They were not sleeping. They were not going to wake up. Jay ran to find her older sister. 16-year-old Sarah Grace Patrick was in another part of the house. According to Sarah's account to police, she had been asleep and was awakened by her little sister's cries. She rushed to the bedroom, saw what had happened, and made the decision to call 911. Within minutes, Carroll County deputies arrived at the scene. James and Kristen Brock had been shot multiple times. There was no sign of a struggle, no defensive wounds on either victim, no indication that they had woken up before the attack. They had been killed in their sleep, in their own bed, in what should have been the safest place in the world. The killer had stood close, very close. This was not a random act. This was personal. Investigators immediately noted several things that did not add up. There was no sign of forced entry, no broken windows, no kicked-in doors. The back door to the home had been left slightly ajar, but there was no evidence that an intruder had broken in. Nothing appeared to be missing from the house. No robbery, no burglary gone wrong. Whoever did this had one purpose only: to end the lives of James and Kristen Brock. The murder weapon was never recovered at the scene. Investigators searched extensively. Every room was examined. The yard was combed. They brought in dogs and metal detectors to search the nearby woods. They checked drainage ditches and had local ponds drained. Nothing. The gun had vanished. County records showed that neither James nor Kristen owned any registered firearms. So where did the gun come from? And where did it go? In the immediate aftermath, the surviving children needed somewhere to go. A woman named Caitlin O'Keefe stepped forward. She had been friends with Daniel Patrick, Sarah's biological father. She offered to take the girls in temporarily. Sarah began staying with O'Keefe and within days returned to school. Teachers reported that she seemed calm, composed, almost too composed for someone who had just lost both parents. Less than 3 weeks after the murders, on March 8, 2025, Catalyst Church held a memorial service for James and Kristen Brock. The church was packed, standing room only. Friends and family filled the pews. The grief in that room was overwhelming. James's oldest son gave an emotional tribute, barely able to speak through his tears. And then Sarah Grace Patrick took the pulpit. She delivered a eulogy for her mother and stepfather. She talked about how much she would miss them, how she never imagined they would not be there.
For those of you who do not know me, my name is Sarah, and I'm Kristen Brock's daughter and James Brock's stepdaughter. I just wanted to say goodbye to my mama and Jamie since we never got the chance to. I was so used to you guys always being here to the point that I never once thought to imagine y'all not being here. I didn't have a single clue how much I needed y'all until now. For James, thank you for all the life lessons you taught me and for being the best bonus dad ever. Your heart will finally be healed in heaven and neither of y'all will be in any pain anymore. Although that gives me so much comfort, your fight was not supposed to end there. And for my mother, everything we went through does not define what kind of person or what kind of mother you were. You were a beautiful, kind soul with so much gratitude. And so, gosh, James, try not to remember them for who they were and not what happened to them. And be happy for the time we got to spend together and not sad about the time that we don't. I may always and will always be her sunshine, but she will always be my star from up above. And I know at nighttime I can go and look at Mama and Jamie in the sky, and gladly they will save me a seat in heaven like they saved for you. I'm sorry.
She thanked James for being the best bonus dad ever and said his heart would finally be healed in heaven. Here is what people noticed. While everyone else who spoke that day struggled to get through their words, voices breaking, tears streaming down their faces, Sarah remained composed. Her voice stayed steady, controlled. There were no visible tears. To some, this seemed like remarkable strength. To others, including members of James's family, something felt deeply wrong. The eulogy felt rehearsed, performative. As one family member would later describe it, it did not feel sincere. In the weeks that followed, Sarah became increasingly active on TikTok. She posted videos about her grief, about missing her mother. She shared crying videos asking for prayers. On Mother's Day 2025, she posted a tribute calling Kristen her ultimate inspiration. One post read, "What do you mean? Can't call my mum?" Another simply asked, "Why me?" And then investigators discovered something that would change the entire trajectory of this case. Sarah had been reaching out to true crime content creators, multiple creators, across multiple platforms. She was messaging them, asking them to cover her parents' murder case. One creator received this message from Sarah. "Hey, I was wondering if you would be able to cover my parents' murder case. It's super interesting, and I think your audience would love it." Super interesting. Those were her words, about her own parents' murders. She was pitching their deaths like content, like entertainment. The creator was disturbed enough to report it to authorities. Screenshots were preserved. Everything was turned over to investigators. Other creators came forward with similar messages. Sarah had been systematically reaching out, trying to shape the narrative before anyone even knew she was a suspect. If you are finding value in this deep dive into one of the most controversial cases unfolding right now, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. By sharing this video with someone you care about, you are not just supporting this channel, you are helping spread awareness about cases like this one. Because understanding what happened to the Brock family could help protect other families from similar tragedies. Now, let us talk about the evidence that led investigators to focus on Sarah Grace Patrick. In the beginning of any investigation, everyone is a suspect. Investigators have to eliminate possibilities methodically. In this case, the evidence began pointing in one direction very quickly. First, there was the crime scene itself. No forced entry. No robbery. The victims were killed in their sleep, suggesting they knew and trusted whoever was in the house with them. This was someone with intimate knowledge of the family's routines. Second, there was the timeline Sarah provided to investigators. She said she went to sleep around midnight on February 19th, but here is where her story starts to fall apart. She told police that sometime between 11:40 and 11:50 that night, she heard the alarm from James's LVAD device. This is critical. LVAD devices have built-in safety alarms that activate when there is a significant change in the patient's condition. These alarms are designed to be impossible to ignore. They start at a moderate volume and escalate, getting louder and more urgent. Sarah heard that alarm. She admitted it. She remembered it clearly enough to give investigators a specific time window. But she claims she did not get up to check on James. She did not alert her mother. She did not call for help. She just went to sleep. Now here is the contradiction investigators could not ignore. Sarah claims she heard a medical device alarm from down the hall, but she also claims she did not hear gunshots, multiple gunshots, fired inside the same house. If she could hear an LVAD alarm clearly enough to remember the specific time, how could she sleep through gunfire? Then there was the digital evidence. Investigators seized Sarah's devices within hours of the murders, before she could cover her tracks. Modern digital forensics can recover almost anything. Search histories, text messages, deleted files. What investigators found has not been fully revealed, but according to sources close to the investigation, the digital evidence was damaging. Those TikTok messages to true crime creators suddenly looked very different. Not the actions of a grieving daughter seeking answers, but potentially the calculated moves of someone trying to control how the story was told. For nearly 5 months, the case went quiet publicly. Sarah continued living with her guardian, attending school, posting on social media. She graduated from high school in May 2025. She went to the beach. She spent time with her boyfriend. To the outside world, it looked like life was moving on. Behind the scenes, investigators were building their case. On July 1st, 2025, the Carroll County Sheriff's Office submitted an arrest warrant for Sarah Grace Patrick. 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of aggravated assault.
Of her mother and stepfather. 17-year-old Sarah Grace Patrick has been charged as an adult in the shooting deaths of Kristen Brock and James Brock. Investigators say the couple was found dead by Sarah's 6-year-old sister, and Sarah later called 911. Sarah then went on social media and made multiple posts asking for people's support following the murders. However, prosecutors say there were no signs of forced entry, and that evidence from the scene pointed to Sarah being responsible. Sarah has always maintained her innocence, and she is currently awaiting the results of a psychological evaluation before the case can go to trial. If she is found guilty, what do you think her sentence should be? A teen is
1 week later, on July 8th, Sarah turned herself in. Her biological father drove her to the station. She was booked, fingerprinted, and processed. Because of the severity of the crimes, prosecutors announced she would be charged as an adult. The charges were later expanded.
Daniel Patrick, who is Sarah Grace Patrick's dad. Thank you for taking the time to be with us on Law and Crime. There's a lot that I want to get to, but let's just begin with, I know it was a tough day, the day that you learned your daughter was going to be arrested. What was your reaction when you heard that news that that's what police were going to do?
I was in shock, first of all, and it really it broke my heart, and I was just scared for my daughter, not knowing what was going to happen next.
Law enforcement had said that you had to take her to, I guess they had called, and then you brought her to the police station. I mean, what was that whole process like for you, and how it all went down?
So the whole process was the day before, they brought us in for a witness impact statement, is what they were saying, and they were supposed to give property back. When we went in there to allow my daughter to talk, they interrogated her, and we were there for maybe 4 hours or so, and my daughter told them everything that they wanted to know multiple times. At the end of it, they started throwing pictures of her parents at us, her stepdad and her mom, deceased, with gunshot wounds. And we stopped. As a father, she was considered a minor at the time, so I stopped the interview and told them that we were not going to talk no more, and they let us go. I asked them if they were arresting her, and they said no. And about 2 hours later, I guess it was, I received a call from them saying that I have to turn her in by 10 o'clock in the morning, or else they would send out the U.S. Marshals. So talked to my daughter. She was actually headed back to Alabama to be with one of her friends, and I talked to her, and the lady that lives with me that I'm renting from, she went straight to Alabama and picked my daughter up, and we spent the night together, and then 10 o'clock in the morning we complied.
Sarah Grace Patrick now faces 8 counts total: 2 counts of malice murder, 2 counts of felony murder, 2 counts of aggravated assault, 2 counts of possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. If convicted, she faces life in prison. In August 2025, a bond hearing was held. Sarah entered that courtroom smiling, confident she would be going home. Her defense team called character witnesses who painted a picture of a harmless teenager. Pastor Ben Bonner testified about Sarah's commitment to her faith. Caitlin O'Keefe testified that Sarah had been a pleasure to have in her home, that she had seen no red flags. Teachers and friends described a good student dealing with a terrible tragedy. Sarah's biological father insisted on her innocence. Her grandfather, Dennis Nolan, Kristen's own father, also expressed doubts about Sarah's guilt. The man who had offered a $5,000 reward for information leading to his daughter's killer was now saying he didn't believe the evidence pointed to Sarah. The defense seemed to be gaining momentum. That is when the prosecution revealed something that would change everything. Kim Bowling took the stand, James Brock's sister. She was not there to support Sarah. She was there to speak for her brother and sister-in-law, who no longer had voices. Her testimony was gut-wrenching. She described the devastation that had ripped through their family, the sleepless nights haunted by thoughts of what James and Kristen experienced in their final moments. She talked about her brother as a person, a man who called her weakly, an uncle who spoiled his nieces and nephews, someone who had fought so hard to stay alive despite his failing heart. She begged the judge to deny bond, to keep Sarah locked up, to protect 5-year-old Jay, who prosecutors alleged had been deliberately made to discover the bodies. But perhaps the most devastating moment came when a family friend read a statement from James's 12-year-old son, Jaden. He talked about how much he missed his father, and then he said something that cut to the heart of this case. "I trusted Sarah and I loved her like a sister. Why would she do this to me? And why would she hurt everyone like this? Do you think the jury will believe Sarah's version of events? Or do you think the evidence against her is too overwhelming to overcome?" Sarah's confident smile was gone by the end of that hearing. She sat at the defense table, staring down, unable to make eye contact with anyone. The judge made his decision. Bond denied. Sarah Grace Patrick would remain in Carroll County Jail until trial. No release, no house arrest, full detention. The trial was originally scheduled for January 5th, 2026. But then something happened that delayed everything. The defense had hired a neuropsychological expert to evaluate Sarah. The adolescent brain is still developing. Decision-making, impulse control, understanding of consequences are not fully mature in teenagers. The Supreme Court has recognized this in rulings that prohibit executing juvenile offenders. The expert's report was not complete in time for the January trial date. The prosecution had not received the full findings. The state requested a continuance, and the judge granted it. The trial is now scheduled for August 2026, more than 18 months after the murders. What might be in that neuropsychological report? Legal experts say there are several possibilities. The evaluation could reveal mental health conditions that affected Sarah's judgment. It could document trauma or adverse experiences. It could provide context that might generate sympathy with a jury. This is likely not an insanity defense. Instead, the mental health evidence is likely mitigation. It is meant to argue that she deserves treatment and rehabilitation rather than spending her life in prison. The prosecution sees things differently. They point to evidence of premeditation, the systematic outreach to true crime creators, the composed demeanor at the funeral, the contradictions in her statements. This was not, they argue, a teenager who snapped. This was someone who planned and executed a double homicide. So what are legal experts predicting about the outcome? The consensus is that the prosecution has a strong case, but it is not a slam dunk. On the prosecution's side, there is circumstantial evidence pointing to Sarah as the only person who could have committed these crimes. She was in the house. There was no forced entry. She had motive. Her timeline contains significant contradictions. And there is digital evidence authorities describe as a mountain. However, the defense has powerful arguments. Sarah was 16 years old. Her brain was not fully developed. The neuropsychological evaluation may reveal factors that generate sympathy. The lack of a murder weapon means no physical evidence directly linking her to the shootings. Some analysts believe the case may never go to trial. There is a possibility of a plea agreement. The prosecution might offer a deal allowing Sarah to plead guilty to lesser charges for a reduced sentence. If the case goes to trial, it will come down to how the jury perceives Sarah. Will they see a cold, calculating killer? Or will they see a troubled teenager who made a terrible decision? There are still so many things we do not know. What exactly is in that neuropsychological report? What digital evidence has the prosecution been keeping sealed? Are there other people who might face charges? The sheriff's office has indicated additional arrests are possible. Did someone provide Sarah with the weapon? Did someone help her dispose of it? The gun has never been recovered. Someone knows where it is. Someone knows where it came from. And then there is the question of motive. Why would a 16-year-old allegedly murder her own mother and stepfather? Prosecutors have pointed to family tensions, to Sarah's desire to live with her biological father. But is that enough to explain such extreme violence? What we do know is this. 2 people are dead. James Brock, who fought so hard to stay alive. Kristen Brock, who was trying to rebuild her life. They were killed in their own bed, in their own home. They deserved better. A 5-year-old girl will grow up with the image of her parents' bodies burned into her memory. A 12-year-old boy lost his father and the stepsister he loved. Families on both sides have been torn apart. And a 17-year-old girl sits in a jail cell waiting for a trial that will determine whether she spends the rest of her life behind bars. This story is far from over. The trial in August 2026 will bring new revelations, new testimony, new evidence. Whatever happens in that courtroom, the Brock family will never be whole again. We will be following this case every step of the way. In August, 12 jurors will walk into a courtroom and be asked to decide Sarah Grace Patrick's fate. They will hear the evidence. They will see the faces of the victims' families. They will look at this young woman and try to understand. And then they will render a verdict that will shape the rest of her life and echo through the lives of everyone this tragedy has touched. Thank you for watching and for being part of this community that cares deeply about truth, justice, and the stories that need to be told. Your incredible support is what makes this channel possible. If you want to go even deeper, consider joining our YouTube membership today. You will unlock exclusive perks, gain access to premium content, and become an essential part of keeping these important stories alive. Together, we can keep seeking answers, honoring the memories of victims like James and Kristen Brock, and ensuring that their story is never forgotten. Because every case matters, every victim deserves to be remembered, and every story deserves to be told.